Okay, the first item, um, meeting minutes from last meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
The only comment that I have is that you have Jeff Callahan is absent. He's not on the committee anymore, so you can take him off.
Okay, perfect. I wasn't sure when that was, if that was official.
Yeah. Other than that, anybody else have any comments? Can I have a vote to approve?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approved. Okay. Next item is the reason we have a special meeting to talk about climate change emergency declaration. Roger, do you have a presentation, or do you need to share a screen, or what?
I do not. I thought we'd just talk, and
Okay.
we sent around the notes that I'm talking from, so you have everything.
Yeah.
And I thought a discussion, and if you have any questions while I'm talking. So this will involve Helen and Sarah, as well as Jason, adding some comments and going over some points of the climate emergency resolution. As a background, I am the state coordinator for Citizens Climate Lobby, and we are working with our volunteers across the state to get climate emergency resolutions. Right now, we have about 18 cities on our list that we're working with. One of them, Middletown, just passed theirs last month. And our Citizens Climate Lobby volunteer there was a leader on their climate action task force. And so it went through the task force. The task force recommended it to the town council, and they voted on it. So we're very pleased. And we have also one in New Britain, and we have another in New Haven. And we'll talk about where some of these things can lead. We are also talking to the city council in Hartford, Stamford, Bridgeport, and other places across the state. So a climate emergency resolution is a mechanism, a friendly mechanism, I might add, whereby a city can declare that, yes, we know this is real. Yes, we have other resilience plans or sustainability plans or energy saving plans and targets. But one of the things about the climate emergency resolution is that it's an overarching umbrella statement. It's being used across America as well as around the world as a way to unify efforts in districts, states, and countries. So part of the reason we're doing this in so many cities across Connecticut is we will take your words and your climate emergency resolution, should you decide to recommend it for passage, and we will carry them to the General Assembly in Hartford and to the governor's desk. You're welcome to join us when we do this. And we are going to try to get the state to declare one of these. Now, why would we do this? As we've worked across the state of Connecticut with high school students and college students, we find a high level of anxiety and fear about their future. And so many of them are demanding action now and faster. And this mechanism is a way to itemize that, and also with state declaration of this kind of a resolution, we are in discussion with freeing up state funds and gaining more access to federal funds to help Stonington. We realize that Stonington's budget is not big, and so every town needs help. And for this reason, if we have a unified, somewhat consistent effort on taking climate change seriously across the state, then we are getting indications from Hartford that this will be easier to reconsider the state budget, and also in cities to reimagine how they might prioritize things. Some of this goes right to resolutions and ordinance updating and things like this as well, which we can talk about in a minute. Now, this presupposes that everybody understands the emergency situation of climate change. So I'll just kind of ask briefly, does anybody have any questions about that? I have a PhD in economic geology, and I've been working on climate issues through geology most of my career, and being with Citizens Climate Lobby for the past 5 years, we've been well into nonpartisan, friendly, open, transparent discussions with all members of Congress. So we meet regularly with our 5 representatives and our 2 senators. We'll be doing so again in December, and we just did in June. And one of our CCL members in Rock, up in near Hartford, just met with Representative Larson, and he said he loves this climate emergency resolution approach to widening the understanding of what we need to do. So if there's no questions about the science of climate change, we can move on. The mechanism also helps people. Can you hear me okay? I just got a note that, okay.
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay. There's also a mechanism in here that as we pursue the same climate emergency resolution in Groton and New London and down the line through Old Lyme and so on, all the way over to Hartford, there will be some economies of scale and synergy between these communities that might be able to co-fund things so that one community is not burdened unduly with any particular policy or practice that you want to put in. So again, in summary for that, it's a recognition of the urgency of climate change that is impacting us. It is a listing of what we can do about it. And in the handout that we sent you, I've put things that are overarching statements, as well as higher cost, moderate cost, and lower cost things that a town can do. And some of these things can be in multiple community efforts, as well as in individual towns or cities. We also find that across the state, as well as especially in Stonington, Groton, New London area, and I live in Mystic, thanks to the Yale program on climate change communications, that there is an overwhelming opinion of Connecticut residents to do something right now. And so you can see those statistics for each county and congressional district at the Yale program on climate change communications. So there's a majority opinion across party lines, across things that sometimes people argue about, that we really need to do something. That combined with people like Helen and Sarah, who are with us and spoke to you last time, stepping up and saying our future is really something. One thing I want to share with you is, why am I doing this? I am a father and a grandfather. Our granddaughter is not quite a year and a half old. And we want her and our 2 kids, who are now in their 30s, to have a good quality of life like we have had. I'm 65. And so we want them to have a good quality of life as they go through their careers and as my granddaughter grows up. As a scientist who have seen the impact of climate change on most of the continents of the world and the impact that it does to communities, it scares me. And so I really see this as an urgent thing that we can all step up and do. And I might ask Helen and Sarah and Jason, they have short personal statements why this is important to them. And then I'll go back into the climate emergency resolution. Helen, do you want to convey your thoughts? Or Sarah? Yep.
Climate change affects every part of life. It's a part of, like, it has roots in our social standings as well as our economic well-being and our governmental well-being. And I think that
I can barely hear you.
Yeah, get close to the microphone.
Okay.
You know what? I've been having mic problems all week. So maybe someone else should go for a bit.
Sarah, would you like to go? Maybe Sarah can't hear me. And Jason?
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right. Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, thanks again to the Climate Change Task Force, all of you for allowing us to speak and share. So I'll just keep mine very brief. I'm here. This is my way of fighting depression, I suppose, because for a long time I've been really worried, and climate change has weighed heavily on me. I give you one example. Reading National Geographic. When I was little, I used to be outside all the time, riding my bike and hiking on this trail behind our home. And then I was that kid that got National Geographic monthly. And so whenever it came in the mail, I was really excited. So I grew up with that magazine, and it connected me with the greater world. It connected Latin America, Antarctica. It was just a wonderful way to feel like I was part of the world. In 2018, I read an article by National Geographic on the Great Barrier Reef off Australia, and was devastated to learn that half of the Great Barrier Reef is now dead. And I didn't know that when I read the article. So I read it and I was shocked and stunned, and I learned why it's died, and that the rest of it's in jeopardy, as are the rest of the coral reefs. So currently, my family is saving up. I would like to take my 2 boys to see the reefs before they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah. Thank you, Jason. And if we get an opportunity or the sound is better with Sarah and Helen, they can speak about this as well. But their presence is really the demonstration of how important this is to their lives. So with a climate change resolution, we start these things out, like many resolutions, with whereases. And the reason we do this in this format for a resolution is so that somebody reading it for the first time knows why we're doing this, where the information is coming from. So in particular, we reference the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, which is the most revered group of accumulated global scientists who publish regularly. And I might add, of climate scientists that publish in peer-reviewed articles and journals on climate science, and there's tens of thousands of them. 98% of them agree this is human-induced and made worse, that it is an emergency and that we must act. Now you might say, what about the other 2%? Do they say, no, it does not real? Well, a couple of them might, but most of them are saying, well, maybe I want to see more data, or maybe I just want to wait a while before I commit. And I've talked,
Hi, Roger. It's June Strunk. I just wanted to interrupt because I think Sarah, the two that couldn't speak, they have their volume okay now. So maybe you want to let them talk. Anyway, hi, I'm June Strunk. I'm second select woman for the town of Stonington. I'm not an actual member. I'm just a liaison. But I just got a message from them that they're ready to talk if you want to.
oh, fantastic. Thank you,
Okay.
June. And
Okay.
I do know you, so
Okay.
thanks.
All right.
Okay. Sarah, are you ready to?
Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm having allergies right now, so I'm a little hoarse. So basically, I just wanted to say, like, I know a lot of us are into like plants and animals, but personally, I really like fungi and mushrooms. So I don't know if you've been walking around lately, but there's not a ton of mushrooms out. I think I've actually counted like 3 all season, which is disappointing because I was looking forward to finding some. And this
Need
is
rain.
because of a drought.
Yeah.
So, it is temporary, but I mean, like, it is sort of a big loss because it's like, imagine not being able to see animals every couple of years because of climate change, which I guess that is probably where we're headed. So, like, I'm happy that that's a temporary thing. And I'm happy that there's still an opportunity to, like, make climate change a temporary thing. But, like, that's why I would like to see a climate emergency or some sort of legislation.
Thank you. And Helen?
She has to unmute.
See. Helen, are you there? You're still muted. Well, I'll tell you what, when Helen gets back, or if June, if you see another message from her, we'll just put her right in, okay? Great, thank you. So as I was saying, some of the overarching things, the purpose of the whereases is to demonstrate why the climate emergency resolution is important and for many of us a necessity. Because it leads to other actions beyond what the community might already be doing. And it also informs the public, as well as all of our elected officials, more about the science, the social science, the economics. And I might add, there's over 3,000 economists that have endorsed climate emergency resolutions and pricing carbon. Many of them are from our schools here in Connecticut and Yale and so on and so forth, and Pulitzer Prize winning. And so there's strong economic support for this. There's irrefutable science support for this. And we also know that in disadvantaged communities, people in the lower wage earning spectrum, people of color, they tend to be harder hit by climate impacts because, such as up in Hartford, for instance, the waste to energy facility that burns waste is actually put in a disadvantaged community, and those people have a significantly higher asthma condition amongst young people and other health conditions. So climate change is not fair to most of the world's populations. It's not fair to any of them, but certainly the people that can't afford to move or make changes, they are suffering from this. So we take this very seriously in Citizens Climate Lobby, and we are asking you to consider this to be passed in Stonington. We also mention in the whereases that we have topped 414 parts per million carbon dioxide in the atmosphere on average. Now, if you go back a couple hundred years, it was about 270, 280 parts per million. So since the Industrial Revolution, which began in Britain in the mid 1700s and in the United States in about 1820, we have been burning coal. So one of the first coal-fired power plants in the United States opened up in 1820. And we've been burning fossil fuels ever since. It has brought tremendous benefits to our society. It has industrialized and created a technological revolutions, electricity, air conditioning, all these benefits that we still enjoy. But we feel it is now time, because of the deleterious impacts of these emissions, that we move to clean energy. And so that's a big part of a climate emergency resolution.
Sarah, this is Emily.
Hello? And so that's listed there. We also list that some of the things that are going on around the world in terms of droughts, such as we had here this summer, in other countries, famine, disease, and even war are being triggered by forced migration, where people have to move because they can't grow food anymore because of climate change. This has been documented and is in complete agreement with the U.S. Armed Forces assessment on climate change. And in fact, the Coast Guard and the Navy in Groton both have resilience programs to directly address climate change in how they operate. So it's very serious there. We also know that once we hit 2 degrees centigrade, and we're almost there now, the feedback loops of the environmental aspects of the planet kind of go wild. And it'll be very difficult to slow it down. So some people have said, well, why don't we think about it for 5 years and we'll see what we can do. We actually don't have that much time. The IPC and the National Climate Assessment Report that came out last year have said we have about 10 to 12 years before we hit this irreversible tipping point. And you can't wait till that 10 or 12-year time period comes here and then say, now let's do something. We need this decade to get all of these things going. So that kind of information is in the whereases. And then we get into the now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Selectmen of the town of Stonington will make statements of action. This is on page 12, I believe, of the handout. That's where that starts, if you're following along. And the first several are declarations that the town recognizes, as you have in the resilience plan, that the coastline is in peril. And you have some really good things in the Town of Stonington Resilience Plan. And this climate emergency resolution can catalyze getting those things going maybe a little faster than originally thought or anticipated. We also have a statement, the second one, that this resolution provides the foundation upon which the Town of Stonington shall develop future priorities, legislation, policies, plans, budgets, and actions. So you can go back to this document and see some of the things that we've listed below, as well as other things in the handouts that you can do. Some are very low cost, some are high cost, but you have a lot of help across Connecticut. And I want to especially point out the Green Bank, which we used to put solar panels on our house. They are an excellent organization that can help put solar panels on schools, municipal buildings, and individual residents and businesses. So it's important that some funding start out, and I know you guys have sought some funding for the task force so you can start doing some things. This document would further support that and spell that out. And in the third be it resolved statement, where I address that, you want to work towards a date, and I suggest within 10 years, where you have significantly, if not entirely, reduced emissions in the town of Stonington. We are asking all of the towns of Connecticut to do this. And again, New Haven, New Britain, and Middletown have agreed that they will be reducing their emissions in that 10-year time frame. So those are some of the overarching things. Now, there's some additional detail that we feel applies specifically to Stonington. Some of these things have come out of the resilience plan and were a little more further defined. Sarah, did you want to read some of these?
Yeah, sure.
How's your voice?
A little hoarse, but that's okay.
Why don't you touch on some of the ones that are your favorites?
Okay. So, be it further resolved that the town of Stonington and its climate change task force commit to educating our residents about the climate emergency and working to catalyze a just transition and climate emergency mobilization effort at the local and state levels to provide maximum protection for our residents as well as all people impacted by climate change. And be it further resolved that the town of Stonington and its climate change task force commit to keeping the concerns of vulnerable communities central to a just transition and also to inviting and encouraging such communities to actively participate in order to advocate directly for their needs. And be it further resolved that the town of Stonington will create and prioritize education programs for all grade levels regarding the teachings of science, economics, and community aspects of climate change and its impacts, including climate change being incorporated into no less than one class per year at SMS and SHS levels. Be it further resolved that the town of Stonington will conduct botanical and environmental studies and develop resilience plans for coastal, forested, and open green spaces impacted by climate change. See Hoffman Preserve Resilience Plan as an example. And be it further resolved that the town of Stonington should work to efficiently manage organic waste, create a compost pickup system similar to that of trash and recycling, and give all residents access to a communal compost/gardening pile. This resolution encourages the complementary spatial allocation of green space suitable for community gardening townwide. So,
Great.
thank you.
And Helen, are you with us? Helen had a few favorites, which
I can read for her if her mic's not working.
okay, yeah, could you, Sarah? That would be wonderful.
Okay. Be it further resolved that the Board of Selectmen direct all town departments to report to the Climate Change Task Force in no later than 6 months after the effective date of this order on the maximum emergency reductions in greenhouse emissions from their operations feasible by the end of 2023, with the highest priority placed upon an equitable and just transition to all stakeholders. And be it further resolved that the town of Stonington and its Climate Change Task Force underscore the need for full community participation involving inclusion of and support from community organizations such as faith, youth, labor, business, homeowners associations, and environmental, economic, racial, gender, family, and disability justice, and Indigenous, immigrant, and women's rights organizations, and other such allies who will be integral to and participate in the leadership of the mobilization effort. And be it further resolved that the town of Stonington recognizes environmental injustice as a racial justice issue, which the town commits to address, and understands that an equitable transition to a fossil fuel-free economy requires full community participation. And be it further resolved that the town of Stonington will establish an annual line item budget for coastal flood protection and the climate adaptation measures as per the 2017 resiliency plan. And be it further resolved that the town of Stonington will help to create a student advisory committee with SHS to bring a young people's perspective to climate action and to encourage student members to participate in the monthly climate change task force meetings. I think that's all.
Yep, that's great. So what you've just heard is our specific actions for Stonington that Helen and Sarah, Jason and myself have put together. We have looked at not only other Connecticut climate emergency resolutions, which are appended to the document you have, but we've also looked at them from other states across the country and even in other countries. And again, it's up to you to decide how much you want to do. This is a very fluid document, but I would strongly suggest you put some teeth into it, because this is your community and I live right next door to you. And so it's really, really important when I go over to Jason's house. You know, I want to know that Groton and Stonington and New London are really doing their part. And I believe in these communities. They're fantastic communities. And this is really all about the future for Sarah, Helen, and all of their friends, because they will be here after some of us are gone. And we are not sure what the world will be like for them. And so we feel it is contingent upon us as people in elected and appointed positions and community members in and next to stand up and do this. So with that, are there any questions or observations? June, you're muted, but yes.
Yeah, okay, I have a question. You mentioned that I was wondering how many towns need to actually declare something like this for the state to take it on as a whole state?
We have not had a clear indication of how many they want, but what we're doing is we're going for, we are working on about 18 right now. Bridgeport is the largest population. Hartford and New Haven are up in second and third and fourth type population things. So we have our volunteers. We have chapters with Citizens Climate Lobby in those towns actively working. They're having weekly meetings on this and talking to city council members right now, and getting support and support from community members, businesses, and organizations. So we're hoping to have between 10 and 20 communities. If we can get 30 or 40 or 50, that'll be even better. But we're looking at about a 3 or 4 month turnaround from presenting this to the task force or the council or the selectmen, and getting it passed as a resolution.
And then a further question onto that was, so these are different whereas that there's some favorites and some that the town can take on, some that the town won't take on. So I'm assuming that not every town will have the same identical emergency resolution.
That's right.
And is that also a requirement, or is just that stating that there is an emergency resolution with respect to climate change, sea level rise and whatnot, that's sufficient for the state to take on?
We are getting indication from some state senators and representatives in Rocky Hill and up in Hartford that they don't all have to be the same.
Okay.
That if there's actions in there that make sense, that we can direct funding towards Stonington, for instance. That's a key thing, is that they can look at this and say, oh, you guys want to put in electric vehicle charging stations, maybe 10 of them, so that during tourist season or whatever, there's plenty of places for people to charge their cars up. Or maybe you want to get help financing putting solar panels on every building. Now, homeowners can do this by themselves, businesses can do this by themselves, but the city can do it over parking lots and on common space and on municipal buildings. And that can be done through the Green Bank, for instance. And so there are, this opens the door to how funding can be dispersed from other sources.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Rick?
Yeah, I have a list of stuff here. What happens if we get a new first selectman? How do these things work if we get a new governing body and they don't agree with the resolution?
As with any past law.
Well, this isn't really a law.
This is a resolution. This has actions in it that you as the chair of the Climate Change Task Force will seek the various parts of your town to report to you on how they're going to reduce emissions, as stated in one of the whereases. And but you know, people, new selectmen can overturn this if they vote so. As I've learned, I was an elected official in Wisconsin for a while, and I've been going to Washington, D.C. with Ann 2 or 3 times a year for a long time now. And as we know, laws can be overturned. And all we can do now, though, is take a transparent, nonpartisan approach to making the community aware that these actions are really important to do. Let's try to do them.
Okay, next, and maybe June can help on this. As I understand our government, the Board of Selectmen only govern a portion of the town government. The Board of Education is basically independent except for their total dollar amount of the budget. And those members are elected. Board of Finance is essentially independent because those members are elected. The Police Commission, or the Police Department, the Board of Selectmen appoints the police commissioners, but after that, it's pretty much the police commission that handles everything related to the police department.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if a resolution by the Board of Selectmen would cover, you know, a large portion of our government. And I'm wondering whether a town ordinance approved at a town meeting would have carry more weight and cover the whole town.
Mm-hmm. It might, and I understand how Stonington works. So if that is what you prefer to do, that's fine. Again, I think the important thing is that you document the resolution is passed in some way, that you can act on it and you can request funding for it, and that it benefits the whole town. So if you feel like it's better in a town meeting, vote, that's fine. If it needs to go through the Board of Education and Board of Finance, that will take longer. But again, that's your call. That's different in every town. So,
June, can you help us out?
Yeah, I can. Thank you. So yes, Stonington does have what's called a diffuse form of government, but I do have to say in the last 10 years that I have been, last 12, 15, 20, 30, 20 years, every single board and commission works very, very hard to work together, right? So when we, when the budget is presented to the residents, to the taxpayers to vote on, I can't tell you how many hundreds of hours literally went behind that budget between the Board of Education, the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and every single department really, you know, fine-tuning that budget. So everybody works very, very hard to get together. But it's a good comment about whether a resolution is binding for all time. And that's something I think we can ask the town attorney, because the town attorney really does give us advice on our town charter and how the town is set up. And remember that all of these elected offices are, they have to be bipartisan. So you have to have, you know, all representations on the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Education, and also the Board of Finance. And with the exception of the Board of Selectmen, there are term limits for the Board of Education and the Board of Finance. So anything to do, and I will do this. There have been actions taken on the town side to reduce emissions already that the Climate Change Task Force isn't aware of. And I don't know if it's part of the whole documentation that we sent into the state for our certification, but there are things that we have already done. Mm-hmm. But I would be happy to ask First Selectman, and if she would, you know, put the question to the town attorney with respect to a binding resolution. Would a resolution be binding for all time, or would it need to go to a town meeting? So,
Yeah, that's a good idea, and I think that's a great thing to do. Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Again, resolutions are more like maps in a lot of ways, and it's a stepping off point to asking funding. And when, for instance, when the state says, well, what have you done? Well, you have your Town of Stonington Resilience Plan, which I read the whole thing. There's some really, really good stuff in there, okay? A lot of the stuff, though, as pointed out in the plan, is very expensive. And so what we're trying to do here by urging you to pursue this is to give you more tools in your toolkit to get funding and to put some of these actions in faster. So I strongly agree that getting the opinion of the town attorney is a good move, so that's well understood. And if it's a town meeting vote, that's great too.
Okay, next, the town in 2015, Selectman Kraus approved an energy resolution for the Energized CT program. And in 2018, I guess it was Simmons approved the Sustainable CT resolution. So we've had, 2 resolutions already. And I'm not 100, I don't really know how effective they were. And I'm just throwing this out there, is a 3rd resolution going to mean that much when we have these other 2?
I think it will, and I am an optimist, so I'll tell you that right now. And here's why. The CT energy CT, energized CT. I looked at that across the state in some detail, and this goes to where we get our energy now through EverSource. And if you look at ISO New England, how the energy is distributed, and so on and so forth. As Congressman Jim Himes pointed out in a discussion we had about 2 months ago, Connecticut has lots of plans, but very few actions. And so the reason there's actions listed in here is that, again, we'll, as residents and neighbors, we'll help. We're here to help, and we're here to carry this to Hartford and try to get the state to pass this as well and get funding for these towns. I want to see solar panels on every single building in Southeast Connecticut. That's one of my personal goals. And so to do this, we need tools in our toolkit. The current plans to reduce emissions in Connecticut by 85% by 2040 and 90% plus by 2050 are actually impossible right now unless we stop building fossil fuel infrastructure and move towards solar, wind, and geothermal. And so we already have some goals in there, and many of us in Citizens Climate Lobby are sitting in on the GC3 meetings and hearings that are going on right now. And there are tens of thousands of Connecticut residents across the state that are going to hold Hartford and the governor to task on these things. And we need your help. We need your support so that we can go and say, this town wants to do this, so let's do this. So I think it will have an effect.
may I add something else?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Okay. So when the resolution idea came up, what I embraced about it is I was on the Board of Finance for 8.5 years and chair of it for 2. Being on the Board of Selectmen, I think I had said this last time, the reason that why I'm the liaison is because in the past, all the boards and commissions come back to as if they were in silos. and we need to have everybody talking together, right? So last night at the Board of Selectmen meeting, we now just appointed 5 new members to the Plan and Development. I think 2 or 3 of which are from this committee. And also on the Plan of Conservation and Development is the chair of the Planning and Zoning, which, somebody representing Board of Finance, somebody from the first selectman from the Board of Selectmen, somebody from the Economic Development Commission. One of the things that I really saw as a huge missing for us is our zoning regulations need to be updated.
Yeah.
The zoning, in our zoning regulations, solar panel, and I think I said this at a last meeting, our solar panel regulations date back to when they were first put in back in 1984. Like for instance, I would love to have solar panels. I do not have a south-facing roof and wanted to have a solar field, but the solar field that had the most amount of sunlight was actually north of my home, and our zoning regulations do not allow that. So we have to have our zoning regulations changed so that more people can have solar panels. There's also height restrictions with respect to if somebody wanted to have a windmill, you know, like if you have enough space to have a windmill, there's restrictions that your like right now, your windmill can't even be higher than your tree. So there's some things that need to be done. And I think this new Plan of Conservation and Development that's now just been seated, if everybody at the table, we can do that. Having a resolution, I thought would be very, very important to have other boards and commissions understand just how vulnerable Stonington is. And I was just going along with the, you know, the 700 points of measurement of sea level rise out here in Long Island Sound. In the past 50 years, sea level's gone up 6 inches, and in the last 10, the accelerated rate, they think that within the next 5 to 10 years will be up another 6 inches. So that's really significant. Yep. So that the funding, when our budgets are done and the Board of Finance does things and the Board of Education does things, that everybody is more aware of it. And that's where I thought a resolution as a first attempt by the Board of Selectmen would really help spread the message to all the other boards and commissions that this is really serious and we really need to take a look at it. As far as something that's long lasting, that's where I think if we have the town attorney take a look at it to see what would be a like forever and ever long lasting declaration. You know, if a resolution isn't enough, then I think we need to have something else that will do that. And whether it's a town meeting, a referendum, you know, whatever we need to do. But that was my thought.
That's June, that's fantastic. Wow, I applaud you for doing this and having this perspective. It's music to my ears. So having been an elected county person in another state before I moved here a while ago, we did update a lot of ordinances, and that again, the climate emergency resolution can be the first step of highlighting, you know, we need to do this. And we say, and we gave you some language in here that says the ordinance need to be updated. So you have in the a resilience plan reference to you know, various solar funding and ways to restructure ordinances as a reference in there. And I looked them up, and I SunSmart, and they've got some really good guidelines that can help a town accelerate the process with language in a updated ordinance. Another thing that I am urging all communities to do is look at microgrids. June, you need a solar field, but what if you did it in combination with 10 neighbors and you shared that energy? That's a microgrid. And right now it's difficult with Eversource, but we have talked to Eversource. We have talked to the governor. We have talked to a number of people about this. It's a recommendation we made to the GC3 as well. But a town the size of Stonington can, in essence, have its own microgrid. When we see this put into place in other parts of the world and in some places out west, the residents benefit greatly from having greater control and lower cost and cleaner energy. So it's something that we need to move to. A massive grid system is really inefficient for what we need to do with our energy. And I used to work for a Fortune 500 engineering firm, Black and Veatch, and we installed wind farms and solar farms. They also built gas-fired power plants. But I got a chance to look at the grid in New England, and it's in horrible shape. It needs billions of dollars of repairs. Rather that money be spent in your community, some of that money, and that you have more control over the energy you use. It's also safer in these times of concerns about safety and risk, and it's easier to protect if you know where everything is. So these are things that your town can address. We've already spoken to the mayor in New London and to the power co-op there about this. They're chewing on some of these ideas. They're new ideas for them. And we've mentioned it to a couple city council members over in New London. So I think this is something that's going to happen. And again, we want Stonington to benefit from it, and we need your help.
Rick?
Okay, you mentioned the GC3, and in the resolution, a proposed resolution that talks about asking the state of Connecticut to declare a climate emergency.
Yes.
Lamont's Executive Order number 3 seems like it's pretty close to declaring an emergency. Now, what more do you want from the governor?
I want him to itemize specific things. Part of this will come out of the GC3. They are itemizing things in each of the 7 or so workshops they've got going. But it's when we get Connecticut to specifically designate a climate emergency, which it has not done, and the governor has not said this. And the young people across Connecticut have asked him for this through Connecticut Sunrise. What this does is we can work with other states in New England also. And this drives us towards the next step after down the road, which we're after, and that is putting a price on carbon. We're not asking you to make any decisions on putting a price on carbon right now. But what we need is a unified state and town front that understands the urgency of the climate situation and specifically what a town can do about it to do their part. And then putting all of these together and getting the state to declare this, we can carry that to Washington, D.C. And that has real support and teeth. And I might add that as we talk to our 5 congresspersons and our 2 senators, they again and again say, we want to see this kind of support from our citizenry in our towns and our businesses. So part of this is a request from our elected officials on the federal level.
Okay, just for information for the task force members, the town, and this is not regarding the timing, if we decide to go ahead with this, the town's got 4 relatively new key employees. The Director of Economic and Community Development, Director of Administrative Services, Town Engineer, and Town Assessor. And it's the budget season. We may be able to get a resolution passed through the Board of Selectmen, but I doubt whether we're going to get a whole lot of attention from the departments until at least after the budget's done. But I could be wrong on that. But I just don't see all these new employees being able to learn their job and then also do work on a climate resolution. But that's just something to think about.
I might add there that so there's other towns that can offer help. For instance, the other task Forest and other towns have looked at how to look at a budget and how to prioritize things to start this process. And, you know, that would be one place where people making their first budget might want to consider it. I would urge you to give it to them as they're making their first budget so they kind of get used to it.
Also, last month, we just sent a letter to First Selectman asking her to do certain things, and one was to go out to the town departments. So some of the stuff in the proposed resolution is either already underway or planned to be underway, like the zoning updates and things like that. So
Great.
I'm not sure. I mean, some of that would have to be modified, I would guess. There's also a couple alternatives to doing a resolution. There's a program called the Climate Mayors Program, and there's also one called the Chicago Climate Charter Program that different mayors and heads of towns have signed up for. If the first selectman decided that she'd want to go one of those routes, would that help your cause going to the state or not?
I don't know. I think that having a common language from 20 cities in Connecticut will show an understandable, unified approach. So if 20 cities have a climate emergency resolution, you can say, here are 20 of them from these Connecticut cities. And that will stand as a body of data that would be, I think, more cohesive than having different types of supports and things like this. The climate mayors, man, this is a fantastic group. And these mayors are doing astonishing things. That being said, we are looking at getting to state and New England level stuff and ultimately going to Washington, D.C. with this. So I think a climate emergency resolution phrasing is important.
Okay. As far as the actual document, one of the links I sent out was to the Southern Connecticut State University resolution, which is it doesn't have the whereases and be it resolved things, which I find a lot easier to read. And it also has a section where we can list our past accomplishments before the resolution section. Does it matter to you whether we use a simpler format to read, or do you want the whereases and be it resolved format?
It does not matter to me. I think what's important here is your comfort level and if you find the Southern CSU approach easier, and that, go with it. I think the important thing is list the actions in our be therefores. Those are actions, and you can list them as that more formally, or you can list them as bullets. As long as people understand that these are real things that need to get done.
Okay, and just a question for Sarah and Helen and the others. Are you looking for the climate change task force to put together this and present to the selectmen, or was this intended to be a document coming from citizens that you wanted the task force to endorse?
We didn't necessarily, I guess, have an opinion either way. If you guys wanted to present it, I'm sure that you would be more well-versed in the terminology. But if there was a certain, I don't know, like emotional appeal or like appeal to government voices that we could offer, we would be able to do it. Like whatever you think is appropriate is fine.
Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I switched to my phone audio. So yeah, I agree with Sarah. We don't necessarily have a preference on that end. I just wanted to add that we definitely aren't asking that you agree like with immediately with everything that is here. It's definitely in our interest to compromise on something since you guys are more knowledgeable about this than we are. So definitely if there's an item you would prefer be changed, then I for sure would want to hear that.
I
Hey,
have a
Rick.
question, Rick.
June?
Yes. So Sarah and Helen, you both identified favorites of the whereas, and none of them are numbered. So I really had a difficult time following along as to which ones you had as for favorites. Rick, would you mind maybe going back and putting and highlighting in yellow the ones that the two that identified as favorites? Because I think I'm hearing, because what I think might be a good thing to do is, you know, if you highlight the yellow, you submit this whole thing to the Board of Selectmen, and this is something that we would go through and figure out which of the parts of the resolution that best fit our town, and the things that are more important to our town. Since we don't have to take on everything, and that's why I had asked that does every resolution have to be completely identical for the state to take this on? I think that would be a great first step. And I did want to also add that all of the new employees at Town Hall are all very highly experienced. So I don't think that their learning curve is going to be as long as you might anticipate.
All right.
Okay.
So Rick, this is Susan. Can I say something?
In a minute, I had one other thing.
Okay.
I just forgot what I was going to say. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think that I would definitely support the idea of our championing or proposing or recommending a climate emergency resolution. And I noticed in the samples that were sent, they run quite a gamut in terms of the kind of action items involved, or just whether it's kind of a more high level. I really personally found that the document as presented just did not suit the Stonington environment. And I felt like it did need a lot of work. I mean, maybe not a lot of work. It needs work to tweak it to, I don't know what the right word is. I don't think it, as presented, it will fly. I think we need to like be more selective about what we put in there, and like rather than have people turn it down because they can't buy all of it, that we be more choice or selective about what would really work best for Stonington. So I think it does need work. So I think we would need to talk about how would that happen.
Okay. I agree with that.
Can I add something about that?
Yep.
So I think maybe this goes, well, first of all, there was a whole lot to read there, and it was great. And it was amazing that those documents from the other towns were really helpful, as well as the work done by whoever put this initial document together. So thank you, and I'm certainly speaking in favor of it. It seemed to me, though, that the whereases and the action items fell into three categories. And one of the categories had to do with energy and carbon reduction and getting to energy sustainability. And there's a whole bunch of things that fell into that broad category. And these things are going to be overlapping. But there's another category having to do with infrastructure and the fact that we're a coastal community. And that goes to the coastal resiliency document, that 300-page document. A lot of it has to do with things like, are you going to put in a new dock there or a breakwater or something like that? So that seemed like another category of stuff. So it's not a matter of it's a matter of organizing it conceptually. And then the third category I thought was sort of the social justice, educational category. And there might be some additional things to think of in that category, like nothing is included about the Indian reservation that we have within the community. And I think also something about the fact that we have not enough mixed income housing, so that we have a situation that developers can come in and put stuff apparently where they want until we reach that goal of that 10% mixed income housing. Maybe
Affordable housing.
you can help me out with that one, but it seemed like I learned last week that they've got developers who can just kind of slip in and do what they want because we haven't reached that other goal. So I don't know the level of detail that this needs, but it seemed to me that there were three big categories that maybe things can be fit into so that when the final document comes out, it reads more smoothly as you go from category to category. And I understand that they're overlapping.
I might add on that, you're right. There are those three broad categories. We cited the resilience plan because there was so much in it, instead of simply recounting everything that was in it. You're right about the Indian reservation, and somebody from there should be involved in this process. So there's a general equitable for all communities statement, kind of the grand statement, but not the detail. So, and as Rick was saying, if you want our help to reorganize or do this, or if you want to do this and want our opinions, whatever you want, we'll help you with. Because it's got to be something that you like, you back, you agree with, and you're proud of.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. As far as the affordable housing, there's no way around that. It's not going to change until we get above the 10%. And
Well, that could be part of it. That was my whole point.
Unfortunately, we're adding affordable housing, but we're also adding non-affordable housing. So the 10%, where we are getting to the 10% isn't going up that much because of the 82 apartments that are going in, because we added more than that at Perkins Farm. So that the ratio has actually gone down a little bit. But yeah, where is I'm blanking maybe, but where is the Indian reservation in Stonington? Do we have one?
Is the Pequot Reservation not part of the town?
No.
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
But it's contiguous with, right?
Well, it's in a different town.
It's its own nation, right?
Yeah, but they're all the Indian things are either up in North Stonington or Ledyard. They're not part of Stonington.
Okay.
The only Indian thing we have is the little museum in Old Mystic, I believe, and that's not really run by Indians, I don't think. But as far as getting this approved in the other towns, how much town support came to the meetings?
So I testified at one in New Haven, and it was amazing. There were a lot of people there, about 20, 25 people testified.
Well, they have a pretty strong independent climate movement down there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that went well. The New Britain one was done without us. That was done before, and they had good town support. We're finding very good support in Hartford. One of our high school students, Karishma Lawrence in Rocky Hill, did what we just did. She presented this to the Rocky Hill Common Council, and she had gone around and gotten a petition of over 200 young people and a half a dozen businesses, and could find nobody who disagreed with it in that town. So we're finding broad support, and I think part of if somebody doesn't want this to happen, we need to understand why they don't want it to happen. Because if we don't do this, it will cost more. And in the resilience report,
Page 71.
you know what I'm going for, don't you?
I do.
Yeah, that the costs of not doing this, $1 invested in building resilience saves $4 in disaster response and recovery. $1 invested in resilience saves 4 to 7 in response and 5 to 10 in avoided economic loss. $1 invested in disaster preparedness saves $7 to $10. $1 invested in preparedness is worth $15 in disaster relief. And I might add that as is in that report, the town of Verdon, one of your minutes section actually, town of Verdon will save $1.2 million over 25 years with solar panels. And also Newtown Middle School is going to save $1.5 million over that same period for solar panels. So these things make a lot of economic sense. Maybe if somebody says, I don't care about the environment, kind of everybody cares how much money is in their pocket. So one approach is to say, we're going to save the town a lot of money if we do these things, because there will be more hurricanes here. There will be more storm surges. Our forests are being hit by invasive species. And as Sarah said, in a drought, you see the absence of common species. And if that happens enough, Sarah won't be able to find those things. So there's a strong financial reason to do this kind of thing.
Roger, can I say that when I was looking at what other towns were doing and was talking to the head of it in Middletown, he was saying that he had saved the town millions of dollars by moving to more environmentally friendly processes.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I found interesting was in Groton, and that was in talking to Zell Stever, who was in charge of their task force. And he pointed out that, he said, well, his concern was that there was a lot of money out there. Rick, I don't know if that's really so, but he said there's a lot of money from different sources that can be accessed, but that you often need town funding to match. And we don't have that because it hasn't been voted in the budget process. We would really need to have the town budget process give money so that we could match and go apply for these funds. And I said, well, we could maybe take our time doing that. He said, no. He said, what's happening is that these funds may run out. He said, because of all the pressures on funding from, the state on down, and they're cutting towns, and then towns are cutting programs, and then everything is being cut. The pots of money that are out there, he said there are ample pots out there now, but that they will be cut as they get drained out. They're not maybe going to be replenished because the federal government is broke too. So I think we should hurry. I mean, not hurry, but go forth carefully, but also as quickly as possible to access those funds.
Well, some of those funds were tied to Superstorm Sandy, and they did have an expiration date, but there are other funds that come up every year, and the federal government can always print more money. I mean,
okay, well, that's reassuring. Thank you.
It's not like all the money's going away.
No.
All right, other members of the task force, anybody have any comments?
Yeah, this is Dennis Unitas. I had a question. How much bipartisan support is there for this? The question arises because this obviously is a very political issue every place. And one of the things is by calling it an emergency, I think there's a semantics issue with it that it can turn a lot of people off.
You're right. It does turn some people off. What we have found in talking to our congressional people in Washington, D.C. is that a lot of people who normally would not, if their party is not supporting something like this, we're finding a high percentage of them actually do support it and would vote for something if it came to the floor. So we're finding a higher level of bipartisanship here on this issue as we go through each new hurricane, each new drought, each new wildfire. And so I hear you loud and clear. Citizens Climate Lobby is nonpartisan. We have conservatives, progressives, independents. We have all age groups and all ethnic groups. And what we're doing is keeping the door open for respectful, polite, and transparent discussions. And Ann and I have met personally with a number of conservatives in Washington, D.C., as well as progressives. And we find if you just are respectful, I mean, you already you get the door open and then you start talking. As a scientist, I can address some pretty high level stuff, but a big challenge is to break it down so that we can get our arms around it and understand what's at stake. And everybody's got kids. Everybody's got, you know, wants a good quality of life. So we have this huge American commonality that we see in people who might be of different parties, and they're coming together. I think this is another way we can come together.
May I add something too, Roger?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Dennis, I think about this all the time as well. I think I have two thoughts because I also have the same concerns or had the same concerns. But I think first I would say that while it is political, it's good politics because it's based on really good science. I mean, the resolution is backed by what the scientists are asking us for and what they're asking us to do. So in that respect, I feel very good about moving forward. You know, and making sure that this good, clean politics based on good science. And the second thing I would suggest is that it's true, and your point is taken. And I also think that what that means is if you embrace the resolution because you feel that it is in fact an emergency we're dealing with. First of all, if it is an emergency, then an emergency resolution is the right thing to do. And if it's the right thing to do, and you're worried that it's political, then the next thing you must embrace is the education piece that has to go along with the passing or the preparing for the passing of a resolution. That means really getting out there. And that means you guys doing that, but that means people like me getting your back and making sure we do everything we can to educate people to make sure they understand that, yes, this is an emergency and it looks a little different than, say, a fire, right? It's a different kind of emergency, but it requires an emergency response. And that's why that wording is appropriate, and that's why an entire resolution is appropriate. So I agree with your concern, but I think that's the answer in moving forward and how you deal with it.
Jason, I agree with you. The whole concept of education is probably the most important thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if there are partisan issues on it, then maybe education will make those go away.
Yeah, and there's creative ways that you as a task force can help with that. And then there's folks like me who will throw every single resource I have in support of your education for the public, you know, whether that's public hearings and presentations, having, for example, Roger speak, you know, in the high school auditorium for one evening or whatever it takes to make sure people are on the same page and have an opportunity to also, I also see education as a way to make sure that people have an opportunity to join us. For us to really invite them, and we need to make sure we do a good job with that.
And Rise Up Mystic has quite a lot of people behind it.
May I make a comment?
Okay.
Okay. So how I have approached this on the Board of Finance and also on the Board of Selectmen is to stay out of the politics. Many of you may not know this, but I am a retired PhD chemist. So this is something, and I also worked in the fossil fuel industry back in the 70s. So, you know, the cause of climate change has always been never a question among scientists. It's unfortunate, and I am a Democrat, all right, but it's unfortunate that a former vice president was the messenger, and that's what now made it political. So I think the one thing that we really need to focus on, and this is what my focus has been, is that these are the facts. We've had a drought here this past summer, and downtown Mystic has flooding, all right? I work in the Allen School building, and we have flooding down there during a non-full moon, all right, during a high tide every day. So, I mean, it's real, right? We have this. These are the facts. And the cause of it is the one thing that people will argue about. The fact is that it's happening. We need to adapt, and we need to have a resolution to make sure that everybody understands our vulnerability. Somebody made a comment about the economic impact. Back in 2004, when oil prices were climbing, and I think they reached a peak of $140 per barrel back in 2006, 2007, that's when hybrid cars became very, very popular. It's when it hits the pocketbook, right? So as far as Stonington is concerned, if you look at a third of our taxable properties are vulnerable, and these are the properties that generate 50% of our tax revenue. I mean, if we don't do something, this town is not going to have a tax base to go on. So I just want you to know from my approach, I'm going to deal with the facts and the negative economic impact of what this is causing, and that we already have flooding. I mean, we already have flooding. So we need to do something about it. And to try to keep the politics out of it, then I think everybody will be more aligned with it. I know there's great, you know, agreement that this is something that we have to do. Anyway, so I just wanted to let you know what my thoughts were about the political aspect of it and trying to negotiate and trying not to really focus on that.
I think your comment on the impacts to Stonington directly are definitely things that should be highlighted in the whereas section, or whatever the equivalent of the whereas section would be.
I have a question. To proceed, would you guys like to then take this document and, you know, Rick, you mentioned getting it into a format that you like a little more. Would you like to do that, or do you want some help from our team?
Well, we have to, first the task force has to vote to see whether we want to go forward with it, and then we'll decide that.
Okay.
But we're still asking whether any other task force members have any comments. No? All right. Do I have a motion that we should proceed with creating a climate emergency declaration?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right. As far as the task force members, as far as the format, do you like the whereases in the be it resolved, or would you rather have it in a simpler language format?
I'll make a comment, Rick. I don't think it matters. I think that we are going to end up explaining the document, summarizing the document more often than not, rather than people really reading it through. And the people who really read it through are gonna, you know, have various opinions on how they would have liked it to be. I think as long as Susan was saying that it's tailored to Stonington, it makes sense to Stonington. I know, as June was saying, we, you know, stick to the facts and the things that concern our residents, then, you know, I don't know that it matters how it's said.
Okay. Any other opinions?
This is Susan. I guess I would agree with Lindsay that in the end, it probably isn't terribly important if you have the whereases and everything, but I did find the document as presented to be very overwhelming to read. I mean, admittedly, I only discovered that I had it late in the day, so I didn't get to spend a lot of time on it. But I think it somehow does need to be simplified, either by lumping things together or creating sections or something that is a little more linear.
I have a suggestion for how you might do it. And that is if you take the document and all those whereases about the world and everything and the different, you know, the Paris Agreement and all of that, and you simply say, whereas there is no longer any question about climate change, and whereas this is an emergency that is felt by the entire world, as further detailed in Appendix A. You know, you can get all that, people who want to read all of it go into Appendix A, but then you say, you know, and whereas Stonington has a particular need to address, because it's a coastal town, something like this, Stonington has a particular need to promptly address the climate change issues that affect it very, very seriously, as documented in our own statements that have been put together by people in this town. You know, then you can say that as a whereas and then go right into Stonington without so much preliminary at the beginning about, you know, what went on in Paris and other places. Because people do know that, people who are interested in this issue, and the others can read it if you just tell them, go to Appendix A, and then you can go quickly and neatly into what really concerns Stonington. It's just an idea.
I love that, Julia.
Any other comments? Okay, as far as proceeding, I guess I can take a cut at putting together a document for our next meeting, which is in November. And then we can tear it apart and rearrange it and whatever, if that's acceptable to the task force.
Do we get it in the form of a Word document
Yeah.
to mark it up?
Yeah.
Going back to the question that arose earlier, would this be presented by the Climate Change Task Force, by the group of students, or could it be presented jointly by both groups?
Good idea.
It would either have to be by the task force or jointly if we're putting the document together. I mean, if we wanted to let the students put together a document and then we send a letter in favor of it, we could do that too. But I got the indication that you wanted this to be from the task force. Correct?
Yes, I do endorse having Helen and Sarah a part of this whole process because of the importance to them. And also this is an incredible educational process for young people to learn from you. And so if, at one of the whereases that Sarah read, you know, to have them involved in as an advisory group of some sort. So however you see fit to allow that to happen, I think it's great.
Okay.
If you find that it would be useful for us to participate in that way, we would definitely love to.
Okay. Did you two ever send in an application to the selectmen to be on this committee?
Yes, they expressed that they don't have a mechanism to appoint people under 18 to any committee. Even like I did specify that it was my preference to be an ad hoc member, but she said it wouldn't be a possibility at the moment.
All right. Okay. So I guess that's how we'll proceed. Is I'll create a document for the next meeting, and I'll send it out, ahead of time, and you can start working on it and send in comments if you want. June, you're going to check with Danielle to get the town attorney opinion on how binding a document like this is. If June's still here.
Yes, I'm still here. I was muted, yes.
Okay. So I think we're done with this item. A couple of notes. I called in on the capital improvement meeting this afternoon. There were only 2 people that called in, myself and then another fellow who admittedly was asking for a pie in the sky. He wanted to work with the Catholic Church to put in a parking garage in their parking lot. He said he knew it wouldn't ever get approved, but what I asked for was the line item for coastal resiliency to be maintained at level A and bumped up to $500,000 a year. And then I added one for electric vehicle charging stations at level B for $50,000 a year. So I'm not really sure how far that will go. I mean, there'll be a number of public hearings on capital improvement budget and the general budget between now and January. So there'll be other opportunities to speak. Second, congratulations to Susan and Lindsay. I'm being appointed to the POCD Implementation Committee. Good luck.
You noticed.
You gotta get sworn in so you can go to the meeting on Monday. The other thing on the agenda, there's a conference in Yukon Circa on November 20th. And then I sent you another one that came up after I sent the agenda out that was from Sea Grant. That another, I think it's the Friday before that, which both are free and they're virtual, so anybody can sign up for them. I think that's that. Anybody else have anything? Hearing not.
Oh, never mind. Strike that, Bill.
Rick, what's the date of our next meeting?
It's the 3rd Thursday.
I know, I'm just looking, we're not getting it stuck with Thanksgiving. I'm just looking real quick. November 1, 2. Okay, it's the Thursday before Thanksgiving, I guess. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, I all of a sudden I was concerned that was Thanksgiving. All right.
I just wanted to add, I'm sure others share the same feeling, that, we are excited to have Helen and Sarah continue to come and join us and participate.
Yes, bring your friends.
Yes.
And Roger, thanks for showing up and putting together this talk tonight.
Thank you very much for your time and your interest and your support. We're all really happy about that.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good
Good
night.
night.
so much.
Bye. Thanks a lot.
Have a good night, everyone.